I remember the night she told me she wanted a divorce. It wasn't dramatic. There weren't any thrown plates or slammed doors, just the slow unspooling of everything I thought was solid. I was sitting at the dining table, laptop open, sorting through invoices for the small construction business I'd been building for almost a decade. Melissa was across from me, her face lit by the soft glow of the pendant light above. She just finished folding laundry and poured herself a glass of red wine, which she rarely did. Her eyes weren't cold, just distant, like she was already somewhere else. "I don't think I'm happy anymore," she said, not even looking up from the rim of her glass. I remember blinking a few times, like that would change what I heard. "Did something happen?" I asked. "Are you okay?" I need more," she replied. "More than this. More than bills and dinners and waiting for weekends that never feel like a break." I was stunned. I thought we were doing okay. Sure, we'd had our rough patches, 2 kids under 10, her job at the law firm demanding more and more late nights, me trying to keep the business afloat through the pandemic. But we were surviving. We were building something, weren't we? I didn't argue that night. I just nodded, numb. And 2 months later, the papers came. We told the kids it was mutual, that we still loved them, that nothing would change. That lie tasted like metal in my mouth. The weeks that followed felt like some kind of dull anesthesia. The house felt too quiet without the kids' laughter echoing off the walls every other week. On the days they weren't with me, I wandered the house like a ghost in someone else's life. Melissa had taken the paintings off the walls, her sweaters from the closet, and left only the shell of the life we once had. I tried to move on. I focused on work. I started jogging again. But there was this ache that never left. Like something I couldn't name had been torn out of me, and my body still hadn't realized it was gone. Then came the clue. It was a Tuesday. I was dropping off some paperwork at Melissa's new townhouse, something she forgot to sign for the kids' school. She wasn't home, but the door was unlocked. I let myself in and placed the envelope on the kitchen counter. That's when I saw it. A man's jacket on the back of a chair. Leather. Designer brand. Not mine. I don't know why it hit me like it did. We were divorced. She could date whoever she wanted. Still, something about the placement of that jacket. It looked familiar. Not in the sense that I'd seen it before, but familiar like it belonged. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at it, trying to put together a timeline in my head. Had she already been seeing someone while we were still married? That thought slithered in and made itself comfortable. I left without saying anything, but the doubt had already begun to rot something inside me. Later that week, I saw Melissa picking up the kid from school. She looked different, lighter, almost like she was glowing. "You look happy," I said before I could stop myself. She shrugged. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of healing." "Healing from what?" I asked. She didn't answer, just gave me that half smile I'd grown to hate, like she knew something I didn't. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept replaying our last year together. Her pulling away, the nights she came home late, the times she picked fights over nothing. Was there someone else the whole time? I started digging, not out of revenge. I didn't want to destroy her. I just needed to know if our marriage died of natural causes, or if someone helped it along. I asked a friend at the phone company if he could run a name check for the number I found on the kid's school call log. Someone named Eli had been listed as an emergency contact. I didn't know an Eli, and Melissa hadn't mentioned anyone new being around the kids. The next day, I got a name. Elijah Granger, a partner at her firm. Divorced. No kids. Wealthy. Suave. And exactly the kind of man who'd make someone like Melissa feel seen after years of budgeting in sweatpants. I sat in my truck that night, parked outside the house I used to live in, hands gripping the wheel tight enough to leave marks. Had she traded in our life for someone with a newer car and a bigger bank account? But then something happened that threw everything off balance. One night, my daughter Ava left her iPad at my place. I went to drop it off. Melissa wasn't home, but Elijah was. He answered the door like he owned the place. "Can I help you?" he asked, polite but smug. "She left her tablet," I said flatly. He took it and was about to close the door when I saw a flash of bruises, faint but there along the side of his neck. Scratch marks. Defensive. And suddenly, the confidence in his eyes dimmed for a second. Just 1 second. It was enough. That night I knew. Something was wrong, and maybe Melissa wasn't as happy as she wanted me to think. I couldn't unsee it. The bruises. They weren't accidental. I'd seen marks like that before. On the job, in clients' homes, in neighbors too proud to speak up. But this wasn't just anyone. This was Melissa, the woman who left me because I wasn't enough. The mother of my children. The woman I once promised to protect, even from herself. The moment I saw those marks on Elijah, a part of me twisted with something I couldn't name. Was it concern? Was it anger? Or maybe it was guilt. Guilt that I hadn't noticed the cracks while they were still forming. I didn't say anything that night. I drove off like nothing was wrong. But my hands were shaking. The next time I saw Melissa, it was at Ava's soccer game. She was on the bleachers, smiling like nothing was wrong, waving at our daughter. Her makeup looked heavier than usual. Her sunglasses didn't come off, not once. When I walked up beside her, she tensed, but smiled anyway. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice light. "Hey," she replied. "Thanks for dropping off the tablet." "No problem." I paused. Was Eli home? Her smile faltered. "Just a bit. Yeah, he works from home a lot these days." "Seems like a busy guy," I said casually. "How long have you two been seeing each other?" She looked away. "A while." I let the silence hang for a second before asking the question I couldn't hold back anymore. "Since before the divorce?" Her head snapped toward me. "That's not your business anymore." "Is if our kids are around him," I said. "And if he's the reason you tore our family apart." She stood up abruptly. "Don't do this here." I watched her walk away, her back straight, her shoulders tight. But it was too late. The storm had already started inside me. I couldn't focus at work. Couldn't sleep. I started retracing the final year of our marriage. Melissa's late nights at the office, the text messages she'd delete quickly, her sudden switch from arguing over money to caring more about feeling alive again. She'd been slipping away long before she left, and I hadn't noticed. But now I had a different concern, the kids. I didn't trust Elijah. Not anymore. There was something off. Too polished. Too careful. I started paying more attention. Asking the kids casual questions after their weekends with her. Ava said Elijah didn't like loud noises, that he'd get really quiet when they laughed too much. Sammy said he never played with them, just sat in the office with the door shut. Once, Ava said Mommy cried in the bathroom, but told her not to tell anyone. That was the moment I started keeping notes. Then came a night I got a call from Melissa. It was almost midnight. I was still awake, sitting on the floor of the living room with a half-empty bottle of bourbon beside me. Her name lit up my phone, and my chest tightened. "Hey." I answered, trying not to sound groggy. There was silence on the line. Then a whisper. "Can you come get the kids?" My heart dropped. "What? Where are you?" "I left," she said, her voice cracking. "I had to leave. I'm a motel." I was already grabbing my keys. "What happened? Are you okay?" I don't know who he is anymore," she said. "I thought I did, but he's not who I thought." Her voice broke, and I heard the sharp inhale of someone trying not to cry. I found her at a roadside motel on the edge of town. Hair tied back. No makeup. Hoodie zipped up to her chin. She looked like a shadow of the woman I used to know. The kids were asleep on the bed behind her. She looked at me with those same eyes I'd once trusted my entire world to. "I made a mistake," she said quietly. "A huge one." I didn't say anything. I just sat in the chair across from her and waited. "I thought I wanted more," she said. "I thought you got boring. Predictable. I blamed you for everything I was afraid of." Her voice trembled. "But Eli, he's not who he pretended to be. He's controlling. He's cold. And when I try to stand up for myself, he turns it on me. Makes me feel like I'm crazy." She swallowed hard. "He's never hit me, but he doesn't have to. I see it in his eyes. I feel in my chest when he gets close." There was a long pause. I don't know how I let this happen. That night, I took the kids home with me. Melissa stayed in the motel. I laid on the couch in the living room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how everything could be so broken and still moving forward. This woman, she left me. She tore apart our life. And now she was falling apart in the hands of the man she left me for. It should have felt like justice. But all I felt was grief. 2 days later, she called me again. "Elijah's looking for me," she said. "He showed up at the firm. Said I took something from him. I think he's losing it." I offered her my couch. She declined. Said she needed to figure things out alone. But that's not what happened next. Because the next time I saw her was at the police station. I wasn't sure what I expected when I walked into the police station that day. Maybe a scared woman filing a restraining order. Maybe someone ashamed, but trying to find her strength. But what I saw was something else entirely. Melissa sat in one of the cold metal chairs, flanked by two officers. Her eyes were red, not just from crying, but from exhaustion. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. And for the first time, she looked small. She glanced up at me when I entered, but didn't speak. I stepped up to the front desk. "I'm her ex-husband," she called me. The officer gave a nod. "She'll be out shortly. We're just taking a statement." I waited, not because I had to, but because I couldn't walk away. Not yet. When she finally came out, Melissa didn't say anything. She just handed me a folded piece of paper. It was a printout, a screenshot, actually. A message from Elijah. "You don't walk away from me. You just haven't figured that out yet." There were more. Voice messages, missed calls, photos of the kids from school pickup, taken by someone who clearly wasn't supposed to be there. The police were investigating. They'd issued a warning. But that was it for now. Nothing concrete enough for charges. "He's smarter than I thought," she said quietly as we walked out in the parking lot. "He's careful. He knows what he can get away with." I didn't say anything, just opened the truck door for her and drove her to her car. But the weight in my chest was unbearable. That night, after I put the kids to bed, I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. Melissa was back in that motel, alone, and Elijah was still out there, somewhere. I hated it. I hated that I still cared. I hated that I still saw her as the woman I'd married. The woman who used to bring me soup when I was sick, who held my hand through my father's funeral, who whispered to our newborn daughter in the middle of the night like she was casting a spell. But I couldn't pretend anymore. Not about what she'd done, and not about what she might still be hiding. The next morning, I found something that made everything worse. Ava had left her school backpack on the counter, and when I opened it to pack her lunch, a folded note slipped out of the front pocket. It was from Melissa. "Baby girl, no matter what happens, I love you. Always. Mommy." I froze. Not because the note was scary, but because of the tone. It didn't feel like a normal lunchbox message. It felt like a goodbye. I called Melissa. No answer. I drove to the motel. Her car was gone. Her room, empty. The front desk said she checked out in the early morning. I called again. Voicemail. By noon, I was panicking. I drove to her townhouse. No sign of her. I even drove by Elijah's place, which I hadn't dared to do before, but nothing. She was just gone. That night, I was putting Sammy to bed when he said something that stopped me cold. "Daddy, is Mommy going to disappear like Uncle Ray?" I stared at him, throat tight. "What do you mean?" He looked up at me with wide, honest eyes. "She said goodbye to me. She hugged me real tight this morning and said sometimes mommies have to go away to get better." My heart sank. The next day, I filed a missing person report. The officers took it seriously. Given the recent harassment reports and Elijah's involvement, they opened a case immediately. But something in me already knew the truth. Melissa hadn't been taken. She'd run. The question was, why now? A week passed with no contact. Then I got the envelope. No return address. Just my name. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Of me and Melissa. Of the kids. Some I didn't even remember being taken. And then one photo that didn't belong. It was a man, laying on a bed, passed out, shirt off, a familiar leather jacket on the chair next to him, and Melissa standing over him, looking into the camera, holding up a cell phone. I didn't understand at first, until I flipped the photo over. One word was written in marker. Insurance. I stared at it for a long time. It was Elijah in the photo. Unconscious, vulnerable, and Melissa had taken it, used it as leverage. Everything changed in that moment. She hadn't just left me for him. She had used him, and now she was running for both of us. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was a carousel of every moment I'd misread. Melissa's mood swings, her paranoia, her sudden healing. It wasn't healing. It was manipulation. But here's the thing. I still didn't want her to get hurt, even if she deserved the pain, even if she deserved to feel alone. Because at the end of the day, she was still the mother of my kids. And maybe, just maybe, part of her still had something worth saving. But then came a call that changed everything. The police found her car. abandoned on a dirt road outside the city. Doors unlocked. No sign of Melissa. But inside, they found a burner phone. On it, a voicemail she never meant to send. And in it, she confessed to everything. I never expected the truth to sound like that. When the officer played the voicemail from the burner phone, I sat frozen in my chair. The words weren't frantic. They weren't desperate. They were quiet, controlled, and somehow that made them worse. It was Melissa's voice, but not the version I remembered, the one who used to sing to the kids or argue with me about whose turn it was to take the trash out. This was a woman on the edge, unraveling with calm precision. If you're hearing this, I guess I finally lost control of the narrative. I need someone to know the truth, maybe so I can sleep again. Maybe just so I don't disappear without a name. I didn't leave you for Elijah. I left because I was already gone. For over a year before the divorce, I was spiraling, and I didn't know how to ask for help. You were working. The kids needed stability. And I made some choices I can't take back. Elijah wasn't supposed to be real. It started as an escape. He flirted with me in the copy room. He told me I was interesting, alive, beautiful, things I hadn't heard in years. I let it happen. I let myself believe I could reinvent everything. But Elijah was never who he said he was. He wasn't a partner. He was a hunter, and I was the thing he wanted to own. The bruises weren't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that I had become a danger to my own kids because I didn't know how to leave without losing everything. So I started documenting, gathering proof, taking photos, voice memos, just in case. I didn't think I'd ever use them. But if you're listening to this, maybe it means he finally pushed too far. The voicemail ended there. No goodbye. No explanation of where she was going. Just silence. I left the police station feeling like my ribs had been caved in. She hadn't run away because she was guilty. She'd run because she was scared. And I hadn't seen it. Not when she cried in the bathroom. Not when she pulled away from me. Not even when she left me. Because I was too busy trying to hold the family together to notice that she was falling apart. The detectives kept the phone. They said it was enough to open a formal investigation into Elijah Granger. They started contacting her firm, digging into past HR complaints, cross-referencing past relationships. But the man was slick, polished. His online presence was clean, his record spotless. I wasn't convinced anything would stick. That night, I sat in my truck for hours outside her old townhouse. I don't know why. Maybe I hoped she'd show up. Maybe I needed to feel close to where it all fell apart. At one point, I saw a movement near the porch. My heart stopped, but it wasn't her. It was someone leaving a letter wedged under the welcome mat. I waited until they were gone and grabbed it. No envelope, just folded paper. Inside were 2 words. Don't trust him. No signature. No context. But I knew who it was from. A week later, I got a knock on my door. It wasn't Melissa. It was a woman, late 30s, nervous, blonde hair tied back tight. She introduced herself as Stacy, Elijah's ex-wife. I saw your name on the online petition about him, she said. You don't know me, but I think your wife's in real danger. She told me everything. The controlling behavior. The sudden charm that always turned into coldness. The time she woke up to find her phone gone and all her contacts deleted. The quiet threats, never loud, never obvious, but always sharp enough to leave scars. He doesn't hit, she said. Not in ways that show, but he destroys you piece by piece. I asked why she was coming forward now. Because someone has to. And because I think he's done something to her. The police couldn't find Melissa, but I kept digging. I went through her old laptop, one she'd left behind during the move. It had been in storage with some of the kids' things. I hadn't touched it until then. What I found broke me. Audio files, emails, journal entries. She had been documenting Elijah for months. She had screenshots of texts where he threatened to expose her at work. Voice recordings where he accused her of cheating if she came home 5 minutes late. A photo of a bruise on her leg with the caption, he said I bumped into the counter. She kept it all, maybe hoping someone would believe her someday. And now it was me. I took everything to the detectives. They opened a formal case. They brought Elijah in for questioning, but he denied everything. Said she was unstable, that she'd been obsessed with him, that she faked the messages. Without Melissa, it was her word against his. and she was still missing. Then, just as I thought it couldn't get any worse, I got a text. You should have stayed out of it. No number. Just a message. Then another. Now you've made it harder for her to come back. My stomach dropped. Was it Elijah? Was someone else involved? I called the police. They traced the number, but it was from a burner. Dead end. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. Every sound outside my window felt like a threat. I moved the kids into my room, kept the lights on, and then she came back. It was early morning, barely light outside. I heard the doorbell and rushed to the front. Melissa stood on the porch, hair tangled, clothes wrinkled, a bruise across her collarbone, eyes swollen but open. Alive. I didn't speak, just pulled her inside. She collapsed in my arms. Not crying, not shaking, just surrendering. I was staying at a friend's cabin, she whispered later. No phone, no internet, just needed to disappear. Why come back now? I asked. She looked up at me with hollow eyes. Because I'm tired of running, and because I think I'm ready to tell the truth. All of it. She barely slept that first night home. Neither did I. Melissa stayed curled up on the couch, covered in a blanket, her body hunched like she was still protecting herself from blows that weren't coming anymore. I didn't press her. I just sat nearby in the dark, watching the soft rise and fall of her chest and wondering how the hell we had gotten here. The woman I had once promised forever to was now hiding from the man she left me for, and I was the only one left willing to help her. It didn't make sense, and yet it made perfect sense. The next morning, I made coffee the way she used to like it. She didn't touch it, just stare into the cup. Then, finally she spoke. There's something I didn't tell the police, something I haven't told anyone. Her voice cracked, but she didn't look at me. Not yet. A month before I left Elijah, I got a package. No return address. Inside was a flash drive. It had photos of me, of the kids, taken from a distance, and a message on it. You don't just walk away from someone who knows everything. I felt a coldness crawl up my spine. Did you give it to the police? She shook her head. I was afraid. If they investigated and he found out, he'd come after the kids. I nodded slowly, gripping the edge of the table. So he disappeared instead. I thought, if I left, if I stayed quiet, he'd let me go. But he didn't. He kept calling, watching, leaving things outside my door. She finally looked at me, tears welling. I thought if I came back to you, if I tried to fix things, you'd hate me. I didn't deserve help. I stayed quiet for a long time, then said what had been stuck in my chest for months. You hurt me, Melissa. You broke something in me I didn't even know could break. Her shoulders dropped, but I added, I'd rather help the mother of my kids than bury her. That same day, she handed over the flash drive to the detectives. It was enough to bring Elijah back in. This time, he didn't come in so confidently. The audio, the screenshots, the photos, they all painted a picture that couldn't be dismissed anymore. He was formally charged with stalking, harassment, and unlawful surveillance. But the trial was just beginning, and I don't mean the legal one. I mean ours. Melissa moved into the guest room. The kids were cautiously happy to see her again, though they didn't understand all of it. Just that Mommy was sick for a while, and now she was better. Every evening after they went to bed, she and I sat in the kitchen with cups of untouched tea, trying to figure out what we still were to each other. Some nights we argued. Some nights we said nothing. And some nights she cried while I stayed silent. I learned things I never knew about how she felt invisible for years, how she hated herself for resenting me, how she buried her emotions until they erupted in the worst way. You were a good man, she told me one night, and I punished you for it. That hurt more than I expected. One morning, I found her at the kitchen table, holding a box. What's that? I asked. She slid it toward me. Everything I lied about. Financials. The messages with Elijah. Even the letter I almost sent you the day I filed for divorce. I didn't open it. Not yet. Just kept my eyes on her. You think that's enough? I asked. She looked down. No, but it's a start. And maybe it was. At the trial, Melissa testified. She stood in front of the courtroom, hands shaking, voice breaking, but she told the truth. Every detail, every mistake, every ugly, painful truth. And I sat behind her, holding our daughter's hand. Not because I'd forgiven her fully, but because I wanted our kids to remember this version of their mother, the one brave enough to face the damage she caused and the damage she survived. Elijah didn't even look at her once. His attorney tried to paint her as manipulative, as unstable. But the evidence spoke louder than anything else. He was sentenced. Not as long as we hoped, but enough. Enough to finally breathe again. After the trial, Melissa came home. Not to stay forever, but to reset, to rebuild. One night, after the kids had gone to bed, she stood in the doorway of the living room and said, "Do you think we'll ever be okay again?" I thought about it. About the years we spent building a life. About the pain and the betrayal. About the new scars we both now carried. And I said the only thing I could say truthfully. I don't know if we'll be the same, but I think we might be something new. She smiled, small, tired but real. Then she turned, and for the first time in years, I watched her walk away and didn't feel anger or regret. Just quiet. And maybe, just maybe, hope. People think redemption is some grand act. Like you wake up one day, say you're sorry, and suddenly everything heals. But real redemption, it's slower than that. It's not loud. It's not glorious. It's 1,000 small choices made in silence with no applause. Melissa stayed in the guest room for 4 months. She got a therapist, found a support group, started writing again, short stories, mostly, but I caught her journaling once. She looked up at me like she'd been caught committing a crime. "You don't have to explain," I said. "Whatever helps." I think that's when things began to thaw. The kids adjusted faster than I did. Ava forgave her almost immediately. Sammy took longer. He asked blunt questions like only an 8-year-old could. "Why did you leave us? Did you stop loving Daddy? Are you going to leave again?" Each time, Melissa answered honestly, sometimes through tears, sometimes with trembling hands, but always with truth. She didn't hide anymore. That was new. As for me, I didn't know how to forgive. I didn't even know if I should. Some days I wanted to. Other days, I still saw flashes of the old pain, the silent dinners, the nights I waited for a text that never came, the sound of the door closing for the last time. But what I kept coming back to was this. She came back, not because she had to, not because it was easy, but because she finally understood the weight of what she lost, and because she was willing to carry it with me. One evening, months after the trial, Melissa came home from work late. I was sitting on the porch, watching the kids chase fireflies in the yard. She sat beside me, pulled her sweater tighter. "I got a job offer," she said. "Different firm. Out of state." I didn't say anything, just waited. "But I'm not taking it," she added. "Not yet." I looked at her. "Why not?" She shrugged. "Because I still have work to do here. With them. With you. With myself." Then, softly, she said, "I know I'll never earn everything back. But if you'll let me, I want to keep trying." I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I watched our daughter cup her hands around a glowing firefly and whisper something to it like it could carry secrets. And I thought, maybe this is what redemption looks like. Not a return to what we were, but the quiet decision to build something new from the ashes of who we used to be. The next morning, I made coffee. 2 cups. Placed one in front of her without a word. She looked at it, then at me, and I said, "You're not forgiven. Not completely." She nodded, eyes lowered. "But you're welcome here," I said. "Not because of who you were, because of who you're becoming." She cried, quietly. No dramatics, no begging. And in that moment, we weren't husband and ex-wife. We weren't cheater and betrayed. We were 2 broken people who hadn't given up. A year later, we took the kids on a road trip. Melissa and I stayed in separate rooms. We weren't in love again. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But we laughed. We shared stories. We built new memories. And when we stood by a cliff in Oregon, looking at the ocean, she reached out and gently held my hand. No expectations. No promises. Just presence. I tell this story not because I want pity. Not because I want people to say, "You did the right thing." I tell it because life isn't clean. Love isn't pure. And redemption? Redemption is never perfect. But sometimes it's enough.